Hi guys, welcome to KikiSimLive. My name is Kiki and this video will be part of a tutorial series where I'll be modeling some custom content for the character Lara Croft from Shadow of the Tomb Raider in stages. So today we're going to start off with her hair. So we're back again today and we'll be doing the meshing of the hairstyle itself. In this video we'll just be covering the front of the hair because it does take quite a long time. I am not very quick at modeling yet. This video, the process of it has been sped up 4 times normal speed. So it's at 400%? Yeah, I think so. And so that means that for this 30-minute video, it was actually 2 hours of work just to model the fringe. The fringe. But oh well, I must say that the back part of the hair did go a lot quicker. But yeah, so today we'll be meshing the fringe itself. We'll be starting with the left side or her right side and then go over to our right side and her left side. So I've just got that hairline right there that I've just duplicated. I've duplicated it many times to create a lot of backups because I find that whenever I'm modeling, I tend to accidentally grab it and then it gets ruined. So I always make sure that I have a backup because as I said before, I really want to use the EA hairstyle, the Sims hairstyle itself, rather than my own. So I'm trying to preserve it as much as I can, but I always know that the one that I'm using to model itself gets wrecked. So that's why I keep a backup of it. Multiple ones usually. So here I've just started modeling the little side, gosh, what are we gonna call these things? Lock? The side lock there, the first one. So I basically start with the front view and then I match it up with the side view, and that usually makes sure that things are in the right place. But as you can see here, that thing that I talked about in the previous video, that 2D and 3D doesn't always match up. As you can see right then, the hair actually went straight through her face. So we do need to adjust things just a little bit, and here I'm just extruding that first line that I created, and as you can see it was extracted from the hairline itself, so some of my faces are a little matched up. Not to worry, I've just flipped the direction of those and now they're all facing the same direction. I'm just adding a subsurf modifier and that's going to smooth everything out for me. That is going to create a lot more points on the hairline, so it will be a bit more difficult later to match it back up to one of the backups that I have. But we'll look at that later. The thing is, she has a fringe, so most of the hairline will be covered up. I just want it, it wouldn't necessarily need it, but I just want it because it would look just that little bit more nicer. But because it is a fringe and it is covering most of her forehead, it doesn't actually matter that much this time. But if you'd have a hairstyle that didn't have a fringe, then it would. You would have to be a bit more careful about how many vertices you have in correlation. Is that the right word? It basically needs the same amount of vertices to go around as the hairline if you want to match that perfectly. Again, I'm going to have to already adjust this first lock of hair just a wee bit because the front and the side view don't line up perfectly. Like this is coming up way higher on the front picture than it is on the side picture. So, you know, it happens. I'll just have to adjust it. It's fine. It's just there as a guide. So now I'm just extruding that back piece out to basically give it some height. And then I'll be adding a roof over that. I just called it a roof. By creating faces. Now you will see me juggle the vertices around quite a lot because I'm trying to create as many quads rather than triangles or n-gons, and a quad is basically just a face with 4 vertices or 4 edges to it, whereas a triangle obviously only has 3, or an n-gon, which is basically a face with more than 4 edges to it. Because it's easier in modeling just with getting the edge loops in there. Now, I do have to admit that my topology definitely isn't the strongest. I definitely often struggle with my edge loops. When I try and select one, it goes like all over the place. I'm like, why? But you know what, with every project I learn a little bit more, and I'm sure that that will improve as well. But yeah, when you are modeling, it is handy to just try and keep as many quads as there are triangles. Sometimes I am just a bit like, oh, I really don't know how to solve this. Like for instance here, we're having a situation where I had to create a triangle there. It's not something that you can always avoid, for instance, but sometimes if you have a triangle that where the edges are not all the same length, it can create artifacts, but I did check it just by going into solid mode, and as long as there are no artifacts, I'm going with it because the hair is not necessarily doesn't have any animation to it. So now I've just inserted a face, or inset a face, because I wanted to drag out that front lock of hair. I made it work in the end, but this was not the best way to do that bit. I mean, when I'm working on the other side, that was a better way to handle that situation. But I made it work in the end. But yeah, no, it took a lot of adjusting to get that to look like a lock of hair that just sprung free from the main lock, if you will. So as you can see, this bit here is not quite high enough. It's not quite matching the side picture there, so I'm just using proportional editing to pull it out a bit more. And as you might have guessed, this is completely wrecking the hairline as well, because it's pulling that with it, which is why I've got a backup. So it's fine. For now, we can all breathe. But yeah, it will be a massive hassle to adjust the hairline later on, because it is all underneath that fringe. So it is a bit difficult to see. As you can see, I'm toggling between wireframe mode and texture mode. Is it texture mode or solid? No, it's all wireframe or solid mode. Yeah, wireframe and solid mode is what I'm toggling between. And the thing with wireframe, it's great because you can see your background images through there. So my guide pictures that I've painstakingly created in Photoshop. But it also means that the more vertices you have, the more it's going to block your view, and then it gets a bit confusing once the hair has a lot more vertices to it. So here you can see me trying to adjust and make that lock of hair look a bit more natural, because I think we can all agree that didn't look right. And now I'm just going to put smooth shading on, because as you can see a load of the faces. And now that I've pressed smooth shading, it's just created a lovely smooth surface. So what I'm doing for the hair now is I'm creating a backside to it, so that if you were to look at it from the side, or in however angle you're looking at it, that catches that back part of it, that you're not looking at nothing, basically. It needs an underside to it. I'm like wildly expressive with my hands at the moment to try and explain myself, but you can't see it at all. It's like when you say goodbye on the phone and you like wave goodbye, and then you're like, why am I waving goodbye? It's like the person can't see me. Again, if it's unclear what I'm doing right now, because it is all hidden behind all the other faces, is I'm still creating the underside of that lock of hair, and I'm aligning it with the hairline that is still underneath there. So right now I'm creating an edge loop. As you can see, it just went straight through all of those square vertices, which is great. But in the bottom there is a triangle form, and it didn't go through there. What I was trying to do was trying to give it a bit more detail. I'll later remove that one because I don't really need the detail in there so much, and if I wanted to give the illusion of extra strands in there, I'll be able to do that with the normal map later. So it's in there for now, but I will remove it later. Now you can see that my edge loops are definitely not perfect because I just selected those two edge loops and it went all the way around it, which is not ideal at all. But you know what, with every project I learn a little bit more, and maybe next time I'll have a better explanation as to why faces need 4 vertices. Now you can see that I've ended up with an extra face on that top side compared to the lower half of that strand of hair, or lock of hair rather, and right now I'm avoiding it. I'm like, I'll deal with it later. Let me just move towards it from the other side. Yeah, I've gotten there. I'm like, oh, how am I going to solve this? It's because I've also locked that into a triangle because I was lazy. I was like, it's fine. So now I'm having to add extra vertices there to create square faces. And that fixes the crease between the two locks of hair. But that still hasn't fixed that top thing. So in the end I ended up adding another edge loop there. So everything lined up, but I am trying to avoid adding extra edge loops because you don't want to end up with too many because it already has a subsurf modifier onto it. So everything right now will be, so all the faces that you see right now will be double the amount of faces, and because I've got it on 2, it will be 4 times the amount of faces, and you are trying to keep the vertice count as low as possible. And that also means that in modeling, you're trying not to have as many edge loops, not as many faces, not as many vertices, which is why eventually I end up removing that crease in that front lock, the one that escaped and is falling over her eye. Because whatever detail we can add with the normal map, we'd rather add with the normal map rather than with the extra vertices. So I'm just trying to add this other lock that has escaped from the main lock and it is falling in front of her face, and this took a lot of adjusting. I'm using the smooth tool quite a lot. I will get there in the end, don't worry, stick with me. Yeah, as you can see in my side view, it's way more back than it ended up being from me modeling it at the front. Again, so this is sped up 4 times the actual amount of time that it took me to make. But I am trying to keep this video, well, not as slow as possible, but just at a speed that you'd be able to follow it and keep up. Not in real life trying to model it with me, but enough to understand what's going on. If you'd be able to model at this speed with me, kudos. Kudos to you. Now there is another way that you can model hair as well. It's with Bezier curves, and then you only have to make like a certain amount of locks, and then you can fit it all together. But with me, I find that retopologizing things takes quite a long time as well. And if you would have created a hairstyle from Bezier curves, you would definitely need to, oh, hang on, let me just explain. I'm edge creasing that edge right there. And that is also a great way to add extra detail without having extra vertices or extra faces or extra edge loops. So I could have created that crease or made it a bit sharper by adding edge loops, but by creasing it, I just did that without creating extra faces. And what was I saying before? Oh yeah, if you would have created this hairstyle, you could have definitely done that with the Bezier curves as well. You would have to retopologize it afterwards. And in my case, retopologizing takes just as long as it takes to actually mesh the hairstyle. So this is kind of why I prefer this at the moment, because if it's going to take me just as long, I'd rather just do it once. So I'd rather just mesh it all from vertices, and then I won't have to retopologize it afterwards. Retopologizing is often also done. People would sculpt a mesh in high detail and then retopologize it, and then, but from the high detail you'd be able to bake a normal map, so you'd be able to get the high detail on the lower detail. But in this case, I'll just create the normal map separately in Photoshop rather than using Blender for it. So I'm basically just creating a lower poly mesh from the start rather than sculpting a high poly and then creating a lower poly mesh. I lost my words. Low poly mesh. Oh, I'm sorry. At least you've got something to look at. Usually when I'm watching tutorials and people have a lot of a lot of ums, I'm straight to double time speed. I'm like, nope, no, double time speed. Which you can still do. I mean, if this is going too slow, then you can definitely go to the YouTube option to play this in double speed. So basically all the hair that falls in front of the hairline gets a backing to it. So a lower face, a face at the bottom, at the back part. I'm really struggling explaining this. I'm sure you know what I mean. But everything past the hairline doesn't get that, because from the hairline onwards, it's just going to be one big mesh. If you are going to play this in double speed though, you're totally going to miss out the awesome backing track that I made for this. I mean, it's just created with Garageband loops, but I'm really enjoying the track. having a little dance off with myself while I'm recording this voiceover. Oh, I completely forgot to explain. I think I've already done it a couple of times that I've hidden part of the mesh. You can do that by selecting what you want to hide and then press H and it will hide that, but it will only hide it in solid view. When you go to wireframe mode, it will still all be visible, which is painful because that is the bit where I do most of the important, like first off modeling, and in solid mode is where I correct everything. But it's still a handy tool, definitely. So here you see me switching back between edge mode, and I'm just going to bridge the edge loops here. It's a great way, I mean you can't see it because the faces are pointing the other way, but I've just added faces by doing that, and that is the back faces that I was talking about earlier. And bridging the edge loops is a very handy tool. It basically means you don't have to go and select 4 vertices and then press F. It does it all for you with a big line of vertices. But the thing is, it doesn't always work, and when it doesn't work, it basically means that the vertices that you're trying to bridge, or the edges that you're trying to bridge, they don't have the same amount of vertices. So the Blender is like, what are you asking? I mean, I don't get it. So yeah, it only works if you have the same amount of vertices. So at one point I was just like, oh, I don't want to count. I'm just gonna individually select where I want to do the faces anyway. But it is handy if you've got the same amount of vertices on both edges. Saves a lot of time. So you can see that there's still some faces behind the hairline, and I've just removed those because, as I said before, we don't need those. And then I just hit the side, her right side, our left side, so I can see a bit better. And then I'm just modeling an extra edge through the middle of that last strand there, so I can... I don't know if I cut out my attempt to bridge edge loops again. Maybe. But it didn't work. Yeah, no, it didn't work because there weren't enough, the same amount of vertices. So I've gone into edge mode now, and if you create faces in edge mode, it basically means you only have to do 2 clicks rather than 4 if you were in vertex mode. So it's a little bit quicker. Not as quick as bridging the edge loops, but again, if your mesh is a little bit, like here I created some extra edge loops to make sure that we had the same amount of vertices. And then if I would have done that before, I could have bridged edge loops, but you know, it's fine. This worked too. I am struggling a little bit modeling around the ear. I must say that ear was a little bit in the way, and I hope that eventually when I load this into the game itself, The Sims 4, it's not going to be clipping through, but we'll see. We'll see how that works out. Yeah, so I had to make some adjustments there to the actual shape of that lock because of where the hairline ends up. So we'll see how that works out later when I add the back of the hair. It might mean that I'll actually have to adjust the shape of the hairline itself, which in this area I don't think should matter that much. Just because the hair is covering it, so you won't be able to see it. But if there wasn't hair that was covering it, then it would probably not look as nice, because it would create that seam that I was talking about earlier. So here I'm creating quite a lot of edge loops to be able to match up and create faces in that top area. I wasn't really all that very happy about that, and here I'm going to reduce that. So I'm going to make a lot of triangles, which I said before not to do. But in this case I just preferred to have less edge loops there, because I will be extending that area to the back, and that means that I would have had so many edge loops going all the way to the back and coming together in that bit where the hair tie is, and I just thought it was better to just condense it at that point rather than drag them all to the back. But yes, that has just completely destroyed the edge flow in that area. So here we've come to the last lock of the hair. We're nearly there for the fringe part of it. And this one is a little bit trickier because it is all around the ear and the hair. That ear is so in the way. Ears, who needs them? So here I'm just trying to work out how to deal with this hairline. I think I solved it quite well. Going back to another reason why having triangles rather than squares isn't always ideal is because sometimes it can create artifacts as well. But I did check before when I created the triangles at the top bit of that lock there, and it still looked smooth. So in this case I'm just going to go with it, but sometimes it can create artifacts and it can look dodgy. So this is just the final lock of hair until we can continue to the back part of the hair, which will be a separate video, the video after this one. So I do hope that you'll join me for that one, and I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial so far. Have a lovely day, see you later, and bye bye!